Hi guys, it's Debbie. Something I haven't said in a very, very long time. I think the last time I uploaded here was about 4 months ago during the Oscar season, but I'm back with a long due update. This might seem more grumpy and negative at first, but bear with me. I need to go through the negative to get to the positive side of things, and so don't worry, we will be getting to all the good movies I have been managing to watch in these months. One of the reasons I stopped uploading was my growing disappointment, disillusionment with the film industry. Something which, if you have been following me for a while, you might have noticed more and more in my latest videos. Hit the reset button, go to bed, and just start afresh the next day. I think that's what the internet needs to do right now, because we're reaching new levels of absurdity. I'm a huge film fan. It's my major interest, my 9-to-5 job alongside my YouTube channel, and a big part of my personal life. For the last 15 years, I probably watched at least a film a day. I love talking about films. Then suddenly I was struggling to find even a tiny more sort of interest in watching anything. I would endlessly search for something to watch, start a movie, stop it after 15 minutes, become even more frustrated. I wasn't interested in going to the cinema, keeping up with the new releases. It all felt pointless because, and I know this is going to sound annoying and old-fashioned, but I thought they just don't release anything good anymore. Of course, later I came to my senses and realized not every single title that's released is bad. There's actually a quite recent mashup video on my channel of all the best releases of the last years. But as you can tell, when I stopped uploading to YouTube, I was just unreasonable, grumpy, upset with everything film related. At the beginning of the year, I actually did watch some good movies, mostly award season contenders that arrived much later here in Italy, like The Zone of Interest, The Iron Claw, Robot Dreams, All of Us Strangers. But for every good film, I was watching a string of awful ones. I watched Miller's Girl with Jenna Ortega and Martin Freeman, which was atrocious, and I think the only interest it garnered was because people wanted to see these two actors get down and dirty together. The new Mean Girls movie was terrible, nowhere close to the original, which I love, and the musical twist definitely didn't help. I watched Madam Web, knowing it was going to be bad, but it was a million times worse. It ran to my fold of the worst films of the year. I don't mind cheesy romance movies, so I decided to watch Irish Wish with Lindsay Lohan, but it was mind-blowingly trashy. I gave Anyone But You with Sydney Sweeney a go, and she acted like she was born seconds before delivering her lines, with only Glenn Powell barely saving the movie by managing to add a self-ironic twist to it. So I think the worst blow was when I made those what I'm excited to watch in 2024 videos, and one of you pointed out how basically every title I'd mentioned was either a sequel, prequel, reboot, remake. There was nothing original. And looking at the general 2024 release schedule, I realized just how bad the situation was. And now we're over halfway into the year, and if you look at the top 10 highest grossing films of the year, there's nothing new except for maybe that If movie with Ryan Reynolds. Look at the most publicized upcoming movies for the year: Gladiator 2, Venom 3, Joker 2, Smile 2, the new Lion King and Transformers and Alien movies, Sonic 3, Moana 2, Beetlejuice 2, The Crow remake, and that's before we move into 2025 with the new Bridget Jones movie, and Megan 2, and the new Jurassic World, Avatar 3, Black Phone 2. Also, for someone like me who has to keep up with the new films for a living, I hated that feeling of having to watch a film in time for the end of the year, for the awards season, like, I don't know, having to watch Dune 2 rather than feeling like watching a movie, or even just feeling like catching up with a lesser known film just because I like to. But then that might only be available in a random cinema hours away on a weeknight at one screen for 15 euros. Literally, I had tickets for Godzilla -1 in the only cinema that was playing it. It was over an hour's drive away on Easter week, and then they even cancelled it. I mean, I was doing my best, and the streaming options weren't much better. The highlight of Netflix for a while was Unfrosted. Don't get me even started on that. Just everything about sitting down and enjoying the movie was turning into a task rather than something pleasant. I'm sure also external factors played a role into my attitude towards films. This thing of the film industry being plagued by nothing new, it isn't something new of 2024. It's always been there. It's just particularly bad at the moment. And when you're sad, you won't enjoy even a good movie. I've often spoken about how your attitude in a certain specific moment of life will affect how you view a film. And again, if you're feeling sad like that, you won't suddenly think, you know what, let's get into the car and drive all the way down to the cinema to watch fly me to the moon. So at this point, I was overthinking everything, overthinking my relationship with films. I just couldn't sit down anymore and just switch on the TV and think, oh, let me just check out this title. I started to think that I was using films more as an addiction to escape reality. I would search for something to just distract me from my surroundings and go to another world for a couple of hours, and not in a happy sense, but again, it is an addiction. And then to add to all the overthinking, I started to convince myself that I had irreversibly altered my brain chemistry due to years and years of unregulated internet access, because I just felt that nothing scared me anymore. And I started to become concerned, and not in the, oh, I'm so quirky, like nothing scares me anymore, like legitimately I'm watching In a Violent Nature, one of the films that's been described as the most violent of the last years, and except for maybe that one yoga scene, I didn't find the rest particularly gross. So I thought maybe I'd have to take a pause from films and pause from the internet. In the end, I realized that I'm just simply not particularly scared of gory, bloody stuff. But then at the same time, I can't stand more than 5 minutes of cliffhanger with Sylvester Stallone, because it's just absolutely terrifying for me. I can sit through the whole Hostel and Saw saga, but I was covering my eyes in the first opening minutes of Midsummer. Anyway, all of this was to explain how I was just overthinking everything, and how I had, on the one hand, this necessity to catch up with all these films, everything I had to watch, and at the same time I didn't want to, and I was it was insane. I'm also convinced that social media played a big factor into this. I had to delete TikTok, my attention span was ridiculously low. I even found myself reaching out to grab my phone while I was watching films. Social media in general is just ruining everybody's self-confidence. I would find myself watching these super aesthetically edited movie review videos and think of how boring I must look just in my this random chair, without acknowledging the fact that so many of you were messaging me asking when I'd be back on YouTube, what I thought about a specific film, of how you missed me. That's how sick social media is. It makes you want to be somebody on the other side of the world without acknowledging what you have here. I would look at people, with coconuts on beaches on the other side of the world without realizing I'd been hiking beautiful mountains with my parents, walking alongside waterfalls and deer. I've been eating delicious food, so much pizza, so much ice cream. I got to walk around one of Italy's most famous racetracks, get in the safety car, speed around in the rain. I've been cuddling my super senior old doggy and trying to be patient with my energetic young puppy. I've been on all sorts of odd trips. I've been spending precious family time. I realised how lucky I am at 31 to still enjoy all the things I was scared I wouldn't do anymore once I grew up, like visiting toy shops and playing games, watching wrestlers and attending Comic Cons. And ultimately, I've had to accept the fact that the film industry won't change anytime soon, and I'll always complain about it, you know me. But it has to be in a constructive sense. I need to share with you the good titles that I've been watching, whether it might be the huge new big 2024 release or a small indie movie that I loved and I want to share with you. I know it might sound pretentious of me being all grumpy and complaining about watching films or not, about having the privilege of going to the cinema or not, but it gets scary when it's been such a huge part of your life and suddenly you can't even stand the idea of opening your computer and picking a film to watch. But then something special happened. I went to watch Civil War. It was an afternoon screening. There might have been 6 other people in the room with me, and I just felt at home. It was a beautiful experience. I felt like when I watched Oppenheimer last summer, the seats shaking, the light filling up my eyes, the gripping story, I felt happy again, in my place. By the way, I don't agree with people who say that Civil War is too apolitical, that it doesn't take a stance. First of all, it would be too easy to just have 2 sides and pick a side. And in the film at one point, there aren't these 2 sides, it's just everybody against everybody, and the film is heavily critical of the war, and also it's narrated through the perspective of war journalists who are just there to document the war, independent from any side. Then the following week I watched Challengers, which I also really enjoyed. I loved the soundtrack, the editing and the storytelling, which was confusing at first with all the timeline jumps, but then everything came together and made sense. The next day I watched Dev Patel's Monkey Man, a great directorial debut, and everything started to feel good again. Of course there were ups and downs. I was excited for Kristen Stewart's new movie Love Lies Bleeding, but it didn't excite me as much as I expected. Without giving away spoilers, it went down a path I didn't enjoy and was too exaggerated, taken away from the realism of the thriller. But overall, there was that feeling of, we're so back. And also, instead of letting myself just be overwhelmed by the huge amount of things I had to watch, I decided to clearing up my watch list, watching some smaller movies, and also rewatching some of my all-time favorites. For example, I recently watched a beautiful Pakistani movie called Joyland about a man who ends up working as a dancer at a burlesque style theatre run by a trans woman. I watched and loved The Station Agent, one of those movies where nothing much happens, but you just don't want it to end because you enjoy the characters' company so much. I just wanted to keep on sitting with them along the train tracks, eating beans or skipping stones by the river. I watched Macaulay Culkin getting absolutely wasted in Party Monster and thought about how many times I used to walk past the church in New York, which was turned into a nightclub. I rewatched the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, and even if it was the countless rewatch, I was still blown away by its storytelling and 20-plus-year-old practical effects that withstood the passing of time. I got to see Donnie Darko at the cinema and loved the soundtrack from the big screen. I rewatched Interstellar on full volume, crying and loving it for the millionth time. I rewatched Twilight so many times it isn't even funny anymore. I showed my mum The Social Network about the creation of Facebook and loved the pacing and soundtrack again. Also, I listened to my friends and boyfriends a recommendation, as they had been telling me about so many titles and I had been putting them off for the longest time, and then of course I loved them. For example, my boyfriend had been recommending me for the longest time to watch The Wrestler, and after actually going to a wrestling match, I decided to watch it, and of course I loved it. Mickey Rourke's performance was so powerful and raw and believable. It was like watching a documentary instead of the story of a fictional wrestler. I really felt sad and in awe at how these people literally get hit to pieces for our enjoyment, like Roman fight style. I know there's that meme of people who recommend you new films are important, but after all, it's true. The people closest to you are probably the ones who know what you like. A friend had been begging me for a year to watch A Prophet, and I finally watched it and liked it. By the way, from the poster and the photos I had seen, I thought it was a period piece, something like The Iron Mask, and not a modern crime thriller about prison gangs. Then I think I was probably the only person in Italy who hadn't seen C'è ancora domani, There's Still Tomorrow, and now I want to punch myself for not watching it before. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it. I expected it to be packed with performative feminism. Instead, it's a bittersweet and powerful story of a woman stuck in an abusive relationship while also looking out for other people in her life. Now, because it wouldn't be my video without some controversial takes on popular films, here are a few for you. First of all, I watched Kinds of Kindness and I didn't like it, just like I didn't like Poor Things. I am not a Lanthimos hater. I really liked The Favourite. I liked Dogtooth, The Lobster, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, even some of his short films, but I just don't agree with the Poor Things hype. It's not a terrible movie. It had great production design, costumes, and the first half was pretty funny. But I personally found that this huge, mesmerizing world to explore was then just boiled down to this repetitive concept of sex is fun and it's the only thing that will empower a woman, and let's repeat that for 2 hours. Anyway, Lanthimos' new movie Kinds of Kindness came out and I decided to give it a go. It's made up of 3 shorter films featuring the same actors but in 3 completely different stories. The unifying theme is that the characters are always in an extreme situation, for example cults, toxic relationships, and often do extreme things to please others. At first I wanted to go down a rant of how in Europe we are more used to unconventional themes and nudity in media, and how that's why in America these films were so popular. I don't know, but I think I'll just stick to my own opinion of this film. I think it was very, very dragged out. In my opinion, the basis of the story was interesting. I won't say anything to not spoil them, but the way they were depicted was extremely dragged out. I found it very boring. I didn't find the dialogues particularly compelling, if not just quirky. I don't know. I always just seem to be the only one who doesn't like these films, so maybe I'm missing out on something extremely big here. Another film everybody seemed to be excited about, but I felt let down by, was I Saw the TV Glow. Now, I know my A24 films. I've been with them since the beginning, since the first films they ever released, so I've got a knack of telling when a film is going to be good or just good marketing. Remember, A24 are the kings of marketing. In I Saw the TV Glow, the characters are all obsessed with a late night TV show that they watch, and this evolves into something more. Now, I had a suspicion that I Saw the TV Glow was just good marketing, and at this point I think I might just be the completely wrong demographic for this film. I found this film boring, not scary, empty and filled with emphasis on aesthetics rather than the storyline. Only the constant purple hue was nice. Another hot take, and I think this might be the one that will annoy people the most, is Hitman. I watched Hitman, I enjoyed Hitman as just a simple, fun, light summer comedy. Period. I agree that there is an extra layer of character analysis, but that's it. I really don't get how people are describing this as one of the best comedies to be released in the last years, with such a deep analysis of the human psyche, with these incredible dialogues between Glenn Powell and Adria Arjona. I mean, am I missing something? Did we watch the same film? I don't get it. Now, another film which I wasn't disappointed by, but I had a different experience than I expected, was Godzilla -1. This is my problem, because I always let myself be hyped up to oblivion, and then I'll watch a film with that idea in mind. It happened with The Fabelmans. I loved The Fabelmans, but in my mind I had these reviews of people saying this is the film you've been waiting for 40 years. It's the best film you'll ever see in your lifetime. So obviously when I watched it, I thought I was missing out on something instead of just enjoying it for what it was. This is what happened with Godzilla -1. It's a good film, but in my mind, I had all these reviews of people saying this is the best Godzilla film ever made, such an incredibly nuanced depiction of war and everything, and that's my problem. And now I'm letting myself be hyped up to oblivion for Longlegs, so I hope I won't be let down by that. Other movies I'm looking forward to the moment are Sean Baker's Anora. I've never found a Sean Baker movie I haven't enjoyed. I like The Florida Project, Red Rocket, Tangerine, Starlet, so I'm really looking forward to his new movie Anora, which won at Cannes. I keep on reading great things about Blitz. Remember, maybe I shouldn't read that much about things. So anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing more about that. The first trailer for Heretics, starring an evil Hugh Grant kidnapping religious girls, looks good, so that looks exciting. But I think now I've been talking for way too long, so I'll leave it up to you. Let me know what you think about all these titles I mentioned today, what you've been watching, what you loved, what you hated. Let me know everything with a comment down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.